Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start. Please be seated. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Buon pomeriggio, dico buon pomeriggio a tutte le persone che ci stanno seguendo in questa lunga diretta pomeridiana, in questa lunga diretta televisiva e a questo punto passerò a dare il benvenuto a tutte le persone nella sala. So let's start this opening session of the UN Food Systems Summit. Obviously, this is the official opening, but many talks are taking place, and you know what, it's not just talks. These are very important days, because as the Secretary General will tell us later, this is a call to action. It's not just an occasion of meeting and talking, but it's a call to action. You know that in this very moment, the 42% of humanity lacks of healthy diets and faces desperately need for nourishment. This is an emergency, obviously, but it's not just about emergencies. This emergency is connected also to climate change, but also the fact that we can say that something is happening. 2 years ago in this very room, we were discussing these topics, and most of the people in the room did so many things in these 2 years to make things change. This is what we will try to understand this afternoon, but please, first of all, let me just welcome the remarks of our host country, Italy, and let me call here the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy, Antonio Tajani. The floor is yours.
Welcome, bienvenidos, benvenuti a Roma, la capitale d'Italia che è lieta di ospitare questo straordinario evento che il governo italiano presieduto da Giorgia Meloni e la FAO hanno organizzato insieme. Voglio ringraziare tutti i funzionari del Ministero degli Esteri e tutti i funzionari della FAO, perché riteniamo fondamentale impegnarci su una questione che tocca la vita di miliardi di persone. La sicurezza alimentare per il governo italiano rappresenta una priorità. Ecco perché riteniamo che vada sostenuta l'azione delle Nazioni Unite ovunque nel mondo, in un momento particolarmente complicato come quello durante il quale c'è il rischio che milioni di persone possano non ricevere grano dall'Ucraina, e ci auguriamo che alla fine si possa trovare un accordo per permettere di affrontare e di risolvere questo problema, per dare risposte a persone che non sono affatto coinvolte in una guerra ingiusta. Noi siamo convinti che la lotta al cambiamento climatico, la ricerca scientifica, lo spazio possano essere azioni determinanti per rendere più agevole la vita di miliardi di persone, perché potersi nutrire bene è un diritto di ogni essere umano. Troppi bambini ancora muoiono di fame, sembra incredibile, e i paesi più ricchi hanno il dovere di tendere la mano a chi ha bisogno, e l'Italia è in prima linea da questo punto di vista. Vogliamo essere protagonisti dell'azione, vogliamo essere protagonisti di queste giornate di lavoro che si svolgeranno nella nostra capitale. Ringrazio il Segretario Generale per aver scelto Roma come sede di un momento fondamentale per il futuro di miliardi di persone. Buon lavoro a tutti.
Grazie. Grazie, Ministro Tajani. Thanks, Minister. And now we spoke about challenges and achievements. Let's see this small video just to see where we were at. These are key messages.
In the Eternal City, change is in the air. 2 years after the UN pre-summit, Rome is hosting the United Nations Food Systems Summit +2. In a timeless setting, world leaders, farmers, women, indigenous peoples, experts, activists, and youth gather to accelerate change and discuss healthy, sustainable, and inclusive food systems. Every day, billions of people face challenges in meeting their most basic need: food. Resilient harvests, smart agriculture, inclusive feeding, conscious consumption, accessible and informed nutrition. From our daily actions against food waste to global policies for healthy, equitable, and conscious diets, we can all contribute to a positive change. The United Nations Food Systems Summit +2 calls for strengthened support, including finance and increased ambition to shift to a food systems transformation with inclusive initiatives that are already bringing significant changes in a sector where all public, private, and community actors, including indigenous peoples, young people, and women, have a key role in shaping the future of global food systems. We feed our planet. We feed our future. In Rome, from the 24th to the 26th of July, Italy hosts the United Nations Food Systems Summit +2, a step towards global change.
Let's thank Rai, who's the media partner for all this, and UN is playing a key role in this. And so for me, it's an honor and a pleasure to ask the Secretary General of the United States to join, sorry, it's a wish, I don't know, of United Nations, please, to join me on stage. You see, even better. Thank you, Secretary.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank, first of all, the government of Italy for hosting this important event with the traditional and wonderful Italian hospitality. This is a gathering about food systems, but it is essentially about people in need and the need to fulfill the most basic of human rights, the right to food. In a world of plenty, it is outrageous that people continue to suffer and die from hunger. The Food Systems Summit 2 years ago helped shine a spotlight on a core truth. Global food systems are broken and billions of people are paying the price. More than 780 million people are going hungry, while nearly 1/3 of all food produced is lost or wasted. More than 3 billion cannot afford healthy diets, and 2 billion are overweight or obese. 462 million are underweight. And without access to financing and debt relief, developing countries are struggling to invest in food systems that can reach all people with the nutrition they need to live healthy lives. Meanwhile, unsustainable food production, packaging, and consumption are feeding the climate crisis, generating 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions, using 70% of the world's fresh water, and driving biodiversity loss on an epic scale. Many communities are one shock away from plummeting into food insecurity or even famine. And the dire picture has grown bleaker with the Russian Federation termination of the Black Sea Initiative that enabled the safe export of more than 32 million metric tons of food or more on more than 1,000 vessels from Ukrainian ports. The initiative, together with our Memorandum of Understanding with the Russian Federation to facilitate Russian food and fertilizer exports, have been lifelines for global food security and global price stability. Food prices dropped by 23% from their highs last year. With the termination of the Black Sea Initiative, the most vulnerable will pay the highest price, as when food prices rise, everybody pays for it. We're already seeing the negative effect on global wheat and corn prices, which hurts everyone. but this is especially devastating for vulnerable countries struggling to feed their people. As food prices rise, the hopes of developing countries fall. The Russian Federation and Ukraine are both essential to global food security. They have historically accounted for roughly 30% of global wheat and barley exports, a fifth of all maize, and more than half of all sunflower oil. For my part, I remain committed to facilitating the unimpeded access to global markets for food products and fertilizers from both Ukraine and the Russian Federation, and to deliver the food security that every person deserves. And I call on the Russian Federation to return to the implementation of the Black Sea Initiative in line with my latest proposal. And I urge the global community to stand united for effective solutions in this essential effort. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, broken food systems are not inevitable. They are the result of choices we have made, and there is more than enough food in the world to go around. More than enough money to fund efficient and sustainable food systems to feed the world, while supporting decent work for those who grow the food we eat. And more than enough agricultural innovations and technology that can place healthy food within reach of every person. The good news is that countries are heeding the alarm we sounded in 2021 when I convened the first Food Systems Summit. Over 100 countries have submitted voluntary progress reports on food systems transformation. Countries are taking decisive steps to reflect this priority in national and subnational laws, policies, and programming. We are seeing more data being generated to shape policies, programs, and investments. And we are seeing more partnerships among governments, businesses, civil society, and UN agencies, including through the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub. But rescuing the Sustainable Development Goals means going much further, and time is running out. We need urgent action in 3 key areas. First, a massive investment in sustainable, equitable, healthy, and resilient food systems. It is no surprise that chronic hunger is increasing in those regions with the weakest and most underfunded food systems: Western Asia, the Caribbean, and across all regions in Africa. The State of Food Security and Nutrition report, released 2 weeks ago, also found that 1 in 5 people in Africa is going hungry, more than twice the global average. Starving food systems of investment means, quite literally, starving people. I urge governments to respond to our call for an SDG stimulus to scale up affordable long-term finance for all countries in need by at least $500 billion a year. This will help countries make meaningful progress towards Sustainable Development Goal 2 to achieve zero hunger, and build systems that can ensure people have access to affordable, nutritious food wherever they live. And we also need greater investments in adaptation to resilient food, health, water, sanitation, and agricultural systems that can withstand shocks, as well as early warning systems. And I call on governments to support the food import facility proposed by the Global Crisis Response Group on Food, Energy and Finance to expand food accessibility for at least 50 countries facing acute food insecurity, and the food stockholding mechanism for least developed countries. Second, governments and businesses must work together to build systems that put people over profit. I call on governments and the food, agriculture, transportation, and retail industries to explore new ways to lower the cost and increase the geographic availability of fresh, healthy food for all people. This also means keep food markets open and removing trade barriers and export restrictions. And it means leveraging science and technology to improve the efficiency and reach of food systems. We must also boost support for the women and men around the world who bring food system to life, from farmers and food workers to those who transport food to markets. the World Bank estimates that food systems represent about 10% of the global economy. We must continue finding ways to support the people who drive this prosperity. Troisièmement, nous avons besoin de systèmes alimentaires qui puissent contribuer à mettre fin à la guerre insensée livrée à notre planète. Il est essentiel de transformer les systèmes alimentaires pour réduire les émissions de carbone et limiter le réchauffement global à 1,5 degré Celsius. Pour ce faire, il faut mettre en place de nouveaux systèmes durables qui permettent de diminuer l'empreinte carbone des activités de transformation, d'emballage et de transport des aliments. Il faut exploiter au mieux les nouvelles technologies pour réduire l'utilisation non durable des terres, de l'eau et d'autres ressources dans les secteurs de la production alimentaire et de l'agriculture. Il faut exiger des États et des entreprises qu'ils prennent des mesures plus fortes et plus rapides pour lutter contre la crise climatique et répondre aux attentes en matière de justice environnementale et climatique. Il faut enfin que tous les pays s'engagent à atteindre zéro émission nette d'ici à 2040 pour les pays développés et d'ici à 2050 pour les économies émergentes. Les systèmes alimentaires et tous les autres systèmes dont ils dépendent, y compris les transports, doivent contribuer à cet effort mondial de grande ampleur. Excellencies, transforming food systems requires all hands on deck. Since day one, the spirit of collaboration has shown through your efforts. From the national dialogues that brought together governments, businesses, communities, and civil society in search of solutions, to the establishment of the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub, bringing together all food system partners to end the fragmentation that slows our progress, to the 155 national conveners on the front line of countries' transformation efforts, to the leaders joining us today, and everyone in this room and following online. Together, let's keep pushing for change. Let's keep building each other to account and learning from one another. Let's transform food systems for the future and ensure that every person in every community and country has access to the safe and nutritious food they need and deserve. And let's not forget that for developing countries to be able to achieve these goals, it is absolutely essential to massively scale up debt relief and to guarantee long-term investment for those countries to be able to overcome the asphyxia in which they are presently suffering. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's thank the Secretary General of United Nations, Antonio Guterres, for what he just told us. It's a real call to action. And let me remind you that the report of the Secretary General, Making Food Systems Work for People and the Planet, is available on the website of the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub. And so let's move now to the opening speech of our day with the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni. Welcome on stage.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am glad to welcome all you in Rome at the second UN Food Systems Summit. I am very pleased to see such a large participation at the highest level. I'm particularly proud that this summit takes place in Rome, where we host the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Food Programme, and the International Fund for Agriculture Development. I would like to thank Secretary General Guterres for deciding to celebrate this appointment here in the Eternal City, and also the General Director for hosting us. For 3 days, Rome will become the food security capital of the world. a choice that pays tribute to Italy's traditional commitment to this crucial issue. Food security has always been, indeed, one of the strategic guidelines of our foreign policy and a priority area of Italian development cooperation. And it has become one of the major challenges of our time in this completely interconnected world. The pandemic has shaken the foundations of international trade and mobility and exposed the deep weakness of global supply chains and globalization. As we work to overcome the impact of the pandemic and rebuild global trade flows, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine disrupted global energy prices and helped unleash waves of inflation around the world at the expense of the most vulnerable nations, especially in the global south. The war has aggravated old and new problems, among them food insecurity in many African nations, already tested by long periods of drought and difficult climatic conditions, which are now weaker and easier prey of terrorism and fundamentalism. The war has impacted heavily on grain distribution across the globe, and Russia's pull-out from the Black Sea Grain Initiative is further worsening the global food security crisis. We will continue to support all efforts towards the resumption of this key initiative and are urging Russia to reconsider its decision. As a result, the plight of malnutrition is spreading. Nearly 120 million people have pushed into extreme poverty, bringing the total figure to 730 million. Almost 600 million people will be chronically undernourished in 2030. And this situation has an impact on our lives, on each and every one. That's why yesterday, Italy has hosted also a conference about migration and development and launched a new international initiative to support political stability and foster social and economic development while addressing the root causes of migration and fighting human trafficking and the smuggling of migrants. Our goal is to ensure that each and every one enjoy the right not to be forced to emigrate, the chance to live in peace and with dignity in one's own nation. These are not my words, but those of Pope Francis, who called on the international community to codify this right. Food security is key in this journey to ensure development and economic growth and give people the opportunity to live in their own land. This is also the true meaning of food sovereignty, the right of a people to choose their own production model and food system. Moreover, a stronger relationship between land, people, and labor delivers more quality food and sustainable production chains. I often refer to the issue of the global south and of Africa in particular, not only because Italy is one of the continent's closest neighbors, but above all, because Africa is not a poor continent. On the contrary, it is full of resources. It holds half of the world's mineral resources, among them rare earths. Almost 50% of its land is arable, giving it the potential to feed all its population. The spirit of the Mattei Plan for Africa stems from these facts. We need to establish a non-predatory cooperation model, aiming to shorten value chains and to partner with the African nations to enable them to live well off their own resources. With the same approach, we need to cooperate with all nations around the globe to support them in creating their own prosperity. The prosperity of our neighbors is our prosperity. That is why we're here today. And I expect that we all agree on concrete actions. For this reason, I believe it is important to invest in research and technology to innovate our food systems, to enhance sustainability, to improve the quality and quantity of the productions. Italy will invest in Agritech, a strategic research center in Naples, to develop new technologies starting from the aerospace sector and their application in agriculture. I believe that innovation must work together with our identity and tradition. Our nation can share its extraordinary heritage to address the double burden of malnutrition, the coexistence of undernutrition and overweight, which have a huge impact on our national health systems. While millions of people live in food insecurity, more than 3 billion people in the world are unable to afford a healthy diet. The principle of the Mediterranean diet might offer a solution because it is not expensive, is based on seasonal local raw materials, respecting the territory and its biodiversity. The principles of the Mediterranean diet do not belong to the Mediterranean basin. They belong to the world. I believe that only financing at scale can bring about the transformative changes of our food systems. Cooperation with all the international financial institutions is a key element for the implementation of more agri-feedstock projects. The Italian Climate Fund, with an annual budget of 840 million euros, can foster sustainable transformation of food systems in developing nations. I believe in international cooperation. At the G20 ministerial meeting in 2021 under Italian presidency, we signed the Matera Declaration, calling upon the international community to ensure adequate nutrition for all and set up resilient food chains. But food security will also be high on the agenda of our G7 presidency in the next year. Dear Secretary General, dear colleagues, we are in Rome, in the UN hub that we are honored to host. And here in Rome, we have the chance to start a new journey towards global food security. A journey inspired to the future, to innovation and to new technologies, with our roots firmly planted in our history and identity. Cicero, one of the most important philosophers of ancient Rome, gave us a great lesson. He said, "Of all the arts from which we derive some profit, none is better than agriculture, none more profitable, none sweeter, none more worthy of a man and of a free man." You can count on the commitment of Italy. Thank you, and I wish you a productive summit.
Thanks. Thank you, Prime Minister, and thanks for reminding us the figures of the challenge we're facing here. But obviously, it's such a complex, key issue that has different perspectives and different approaches. So let me welcome on stage the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed Ali, to give us his own perspective on this. Prime Minister, the stage is yours.
Your Excellency, Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister of the Republic of Italy, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. From the outset, allow me to appreciate our host, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, for the warm welcome and hospitality afforded to us since our arrival. Excellencies, food is essential to the survival of well-being of more than 8 billion people that make up our global community. We find existence, nourishment, and enjoyment in food. Food is life. Yet, in a world of great disparities, hundreds of millions of people worldwide are undernourished and malnourished in some part of the world. On the other hand, we witness oversupply and wastage of food in some other part of the world. Climate change and environmental shocks are challenging biodiversity and destroying harvests. Even here in Italy, we saw the destruction it caused in the northern grape-producing regions. These trials are further complicated by the lingering impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, man-made and natural disasters, and growing population. As we convene today in this beautiful and historic city of Rome, we must not only review commitments to action made in the 2021 Stocktaking Summit, but we must work to make the world's poorest people less exposed to these major shocks by strengthening local and regional food systems. Especially as we strive to meet food security targets set in the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the African continent has immense potential for agriculture. We are endowed with arable land available for cultivation and growing agricultural and food system. In Ethiopia, agricultural productivity and modernization is our top development priority. Various initiatives have been launched and significant gains have been made thus far. Yet, many challenges remain. Production and productivity are affected by limited access to appropriate inputs, including fertilizers, seeds, and agricultural technologies. Moreover, prices for nutrient-dense foods have increased significantly over time, making healthier diets unaffordable for the majority. Soil erosion, land degradation, and deforestation over decades have also affected agriculture and food systems. However, in Ethiopia has demonstrated unwavering political commitment to transform the food system in line with our national and international commitments. Accordingly, we produced a food system transformation roadmap and designed a related governance program. Excellencies, beyond policies and strategies, we have been actively implementing numerous initiatives with our overarching goals of enhancing agricultural resilience, ensuring food self-sufficiency, and combating climate change. Various national initiatives have been launched in the last 4 years that are currently bearing fruit. Allow me to briefly share some of them. First, we are actively working on tackling the adverse effects of climate change. 4 years ago, we launched the Green Legacy Initiative with the aim of planting 50 billion seedlings across the country by 2026. By the end of this year's planting season, we will have achieved over 32 billion seedlings, and we will meet our target within the remaining period. On July 10th of this month alone, more than 33.5 million people went out to plant close to 567 million seedlings within a 12-hour duration. This has been a positive national experience. The Green Legacy Initiative plays a vital role in restoring Ethiopia's forests and supporting food self-sufficiencies. 1 in every 50 seedlings are fruit-bearing ones, such as avocados, mangoes, apples, and papayas. Second, we introduced off-season irrigated wheat programs, which allowed us to move from a deficit in our wheat demand to surplus, with a production increased of 300%. This is helping us not only achieve our domestic wheat demand, but also enabling exports. Third, we are providing school meals to millions of primary school children across the country. We rolled out this national school feeding program in the last 3 years. While such programs are prevalent in most developed nations, their implementation remains limited in low and middle-income countries where the need is greater. Fourth, we are actively promoting urban agriculture in urban areas by integrating agricultural practices into urban settings. Individuals and communities gain access to fresh, nutritious produce while also generating additional source of income. Fifth, we are enhancing the productivity and production of dairy, eggs, chicken meat, honey, and related hive products at household level. Through this recently launched program called Yelema Turufat, loosely translated as Bounty of the Basket, we aim to expedite efforts towards achieving food self-sufficiency and ensuring nutritional adequacy. Six, we are enhancing efficiency and productivity in the livestock subsector while reducing enteric emissions. Our livestock sector is vulnerable to climate change and particularly drought. In response, we implemented a range of initiatives to foster sustainable livestock productivity and production while diversifying the source of protein. Notable achievements in this regard is a considerable increase in production of milk by 70% and eggs production by 30%. These initiatives by no means define the extent of our efforts, yet they are key in contributing to building and strengthening the food system. My government is fully dedicated to the development of climate-resilient, regenerative agriculture and the transformation of the food system. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to draw your attention to some factors that will transform our food systems into equitable and sustainable ones. A new and robust agricultural finance model is essential for food security, job creation, and economic growth. This new model should be inclusive to respond to the demands of farmers, particularly in developing countries. We need to enhance access to markets and effective linkage between agriculture producers, commodity markets, and commercial value chains. Digital financial services focusing on youth and women and agricultural insurances should be the main features of a new financing model to boost agricultural production. We must mobilize and establish resources to finance government-led initiatives that effectively address challenges of food security, malnutrition, and the ever-increasing impacts of climate change. I call upon all partners and stakeholders to extend support to Ethiopia and the continent at large in our collective endeavors to achieve food security and transform our food systems. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thanks for giving us these good examples. And let me tell you that in a few moments we will discuss the financial aspect of this with a panel. So let's move to a different perspective and let's welcome the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina. Please, the floor is yours.
I will speak in my own language. There's a translation. Yeah? Okay. Sure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Italy Prime Minister, Secretary General, UNO, মাননীয় রাষ্ট্রপ্রধান, সরকার প্রধানগণ, জাতিসংঘ মহাসচিব এবং উপস্থিত সুধীমণ্ডলী, আসসালামু আলাইকুম, শুভ অপরাহ্ন। এই শীর্ষ সম্মেলনে আমন্ত্রণ জানানোর জন্য আমি জাতিসংঘের মহাসচিবকে আন্তরিক ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি। এই স্টক টেকিং মুভমেন্ট আয়োজনের জন্য আমি ইতালির সরকার এবং জাতিসংঘের খাদ্য ব্যবস্থা সমন্বয়কারী হাবকে সাধুবাদ জানাই। সুধীমণ্ডলী, আমাদের জাতির পিতা বঙ্গবন্ধু শেখ মুজিবুর রহমান তাঁর স্বপ্নের সোনার বাংলায় কৃষি ও কৃষকের সর্বাঙ্গীন উন্নয়ন দেখতে চেয়েছিলেন। 1971 সালে স্বাধীনতার পর বঙ্গবন্ধু দেশ গঠনের কাজ শুরু করেছিলেন। মাত্র 4 লাখ মেট্রিক টন খাদ্য মজুদ নিয়ে তিনি অল্প সময়ের মধ্যেই উন্নত পদ্ধতির চাষাবাদ, বীজ, সেচ ও অন্যান্য কৃষি উপকরণ সরবরাহ করার উদ্যোগ গ্রহণ করেন। পাশাপাশি 25 বিঘা পর্যন্ত জমির খাজনা মওকুফ করে দেন। কৃষিতে প্রয়োজনীয় অর্থায়নের জন্য কৃষি ব্যাংক স্থাপন করেন। 1973 সালে খাদ্য কৃষি সংস্থার সদস্য হিসেবে বাংলাদেশের অন্তর্ভুক্তি নিশ্চিত করেন। তার নেতৃত্বে প্রণীত সংবিধানে দেশের সকল নাগরিকের মৌলিক অধিকার হিসেবে পর্যাপ্ত পুষ্টি সমৃদ্ধ খাদ্যের অঙ্গীকার করা হয়। সুধীমণ্ডলী, আমাদের সরকারের 1996 সালে নির্বাচিত হয়ে বঙ্গবন্ধুর নির্দেশিত পথে কৃষি উৎপাদন বৃদ্ধির মাধ্যমে খাদ্য নিরাপত্তা নিশ্চিত করাকে প্রধান অধিকার হিসেবে চিহ্নিত করি। তখন দেশে খাদ্য ঘাটতি ছিল প্রায় 40 লাখ মেট্রিক টন। পরবর্তী 5 বছরে আমরা দেশকে খাদ্যশস্যে আত্মনির্ভর করে তুলি। ক্ষুধার বিরুদ্ধে আন্দোলনের স্বীকৃতিস্বরূপ আমি FAO এর সেরেস পদকে ভূষিত হয়েছিলাম। তবে দুঃখের বিষয় যে 2009 সালে আমাদের সরকার যখন দ্বিতীয় মেয়াদে নির্বাচিত হয় তখন 26 লাখ মেট্রিক টন খাদ্য ঘাটতি দিয়ে শুরু করি। আমরা কৃষি যান্ত্রিকীকরণে ভর্তুকির প্রদান, 10 টাকায় কৃষকের জন্য ব্যাংক হিসাব চালুকরণ, শৃঙ্খলাপূর্ণ সার বিতরণ ব্যবস্থা নানামুখী পদক্ষেপ গ্রহণ করি। এর ফলে 2013 সালের মধ্যে আমরা শুধু খাদ্যের স্বয়ংসম্পূর্ণতাই অর্জন করিনি, বরং খাদ্য উদ্বৃত্তের দেশে পরিণত হই। সুধীমণ্ডলী, FAO এর প্রতিবেদন অনুযায়ী বিশ্বের শীর্ষ খাদ্য উৎপাদনকারী 10টি দেশের মধ্যে বাংলাদেশ অন্যতম। 2008-09 অর্থবছরে খাদ্য শস্যের উৎপাদন ছিল যেখানে 32.9 মিলিয়ন মেট্রিক টন, সেখানে 22-23 অর্থবছরে তা বেড়ে দাঁড়ায় 49.4 মিলিয়ন মেট্রিক টন। 2008-09 থেকে 2020-21 বছর পর্যন্ত প্রতি বছর দেশে সবজি উৎপাদন গড়ে 5%, ফল উৎপাদনে গড়ে 11% বেশি হারে বৃদ্ধি পেয়েছে। বর্তমানে বিশ্বে বাংলাদেশ ধান ও মাছ উৎপাদনে তৃতীয়, পাট উৎপাদনে দ্বিতীয়, সবজি উৎপাদনে তৃতীয় এবং আলু উৎপাদনে ষষ্ঠ। বাংলাদেশের জিডিপিতে কৃষি খাতের অবদান 11.66%, তবে আমাদের 66%, 11.66, তবে আমাদের কর্মশক্তির প্রায় 40.6% কৃষিতে নিয়োজিত। আমাদের জিডিপিতে মৎস্য খাতের অবদান 2.43% এবং প্রাণী সম্পদ খাতের অবদান 1.90%। সুধীমণ্ডলী, আমাদের সরকার কৃষি গবেষণা ও উদ্ভাবনকে সর্বোচ্চ অগ্রাধিকার দিয়েছে। দেশে বর্তমানে 8টি সরকারি কৃষি বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় প্রতিষ্ঠিত হয়েছে। গত 14 বছরে 690টি উন্নত ও উচ্চ ফলনশীল শস্যের জাত উদ্ভাবন করা হয়েছে। আমাদের বিজ্ঞানীরা লবণাক্ত সহিষ্ণু ধান উদ্ভাবন করেছেন এবং খরা ও জলমগ্ন সহিষ্ণু ধান উৎপাদনের জন্য গবেষণা চালিয়ে যাচ্ছেন। বিশ্বের প্রথম জিঙ্ক সমৃদ্ধ ব্রি ধান 62, অ্যান্টিঅক্সিডেন্ট সমৃদ্ধ চাল, ডায়াবেটিক চাল, প্রোভিটামিন সমৃদ্ধ জাত উদ্ভাবন করা হয়েছে। দেশি ও তোষা পাটসহ 5 শতাধিক ফসলের ক্ষতিকর ছত্রাকের জীবন রহস্য উন্মোচন করা হয়েছে। কানাডার ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ সাসকাচোয়ানের গ্লোবাল ইনস্টিটিউট ফর ফুড সিকিউরিটিতে বঙ্গবন্ধু গবেষণা চেয়ার প্রতিষ্ঠা করা হয়েছে। আমরা কৃষিকে আধুনিক ও লাভজনক হিসেবে 2010 থেকে 2022 পর্যন্ত প্রায় 81,000 কৃষি যন্ত্রপাতি সরবরাহ করেছি। সার, বিদ্যুৎ, সেচ ইত্যাদির জন্য 1,02,917 কোটি টাকা উন্নয়ন সহায়তা দেওয়া হয়েছে। আন্তর্জাতিক বাজারে সারের মূল্য বৃদ্ধির কারণে 2022-23 অর্থবছরে উন্নয়ন সহায়তা হিসেবে 26,000 কোটি টাকা বরাদ্দ রাখা হয়েছে। সুধীমণ্ডলী, বিশ্বব্যাপী কোভিড-19 অতিমারি এবং ইউক্রেন যুদ্ধের ফলে খাদ্যশস্য উৎপাদন ও সরবরাহ ব্যবস্থা বিশেষভাবে বাধাগ্রস্ত হয়েছে। অতিমারি মোকাবেলায় আমাদের সরকার 5,000 কোটি টাকা কৃষি প্রণোদনা প্রদান করেছে। আমি দেশের সকল মানুষকে প্রতি ইঞ্চি জমি চাষের আওতায় আনার জন্য আহ্বান জানিয়েছি। আমি চাই আমাদের নিজেদের খাবার জন্য আমরা নিজেরাই উৎপাদন করতে পারি। সে অনুযায়ী দেশের প্রতিটি ইউনিয়নের সবজি পুষ্টি বাগান তৈরি করা হয়েছে। প্রায় 1,40,000 কৃষক এবং তাদের পরিবার এই কর্মসূচি থেকে উপকৃত হচ্ছে। আমরা 2016 সাল থেকে দরিদ্র গ্রামীণ জনগোষ্ঠীর জন্য খাদ্যবান্ধব কর্মসূচির আওতায় 50 লাখ পরিবারকে প্রতি মাসে 30 কেজি করে চাল দিচ্ছি। গত বছর প্রতি কেজি চালের দাম ছিল 10 টাকা, বর্তমানে 15 টাকা কেজি দরে দেওয়া হচ্ছে। এছাড়া ওএমএস ওপেন মার্কেট সেল কর্মসূচির মাধ্যমে সকলের জন্য উন্মুক্ত রেখে 30 টাকা কেজি দরে চাল এবং 24 টাকা কেজি দরে আটা বিক্রি করা হচ্ছে। একজন ব্যক্তি সর্বোচ্চ 5 কেজি চাল ও 5 কেজি আটা কিনতে পারেন। চলতি জুলাই মাস থেকে টিসিবির মাধ্যমে চিনি, ডাল, ভোজ্য তেলের সাথে সারা দেশে 1 কোটি পরিবারকে মাসিক 5 কেজি করে ওএমএসের চাল দেওয়া শুরু হয়েছে। সুধীমণ্ডলী, 2019 সালে ন্যাশনাল স্কুল মিল পলিসি চালু হওয়ার পর আমরা সারা দেশে 104টি দরিদ্রপ্রবণ উপজেলায় প্রায় 30 লাখ স্কুলগামী শিশুকে পুষ্টিকর খাবার সরবরাহ করছি। আজ সকালে আমরা স্কুল মিল কোয়ালিশনে যোগদান করেছি। আমরা 2013 সালে নিরাপদ খাদ্য আইন প্রণয়ন করেছি। 2015 সালে বাংলাদেশ নিরাপদ খাদ্য কর্তৃপক্ষ গঠন করি। বর্তমানে সরকারি পর্যায়ে খাদ্যশস্য সংরক্ষণের ধারণ ক্ষমতা সম্পন্ন 21,59,000 মেট্রিক টন। দেশে খাদ্যশস্য মজুদের পরিমাণ প্রায় 16 লাখ টনের বেশি, যা 2007 সালে ছিল 10 লাখ টন। দেশের দুর্যোগপ্রবণ 19টি জেলায় 63টি উপজেলায় প্রায় 5 লাখ পারিবারিক সাইলো বিতরণ করা হয়েছে। সুধীমণ্ডলী, আমাদের কৃষিখাত এরই মধ্যে তার জলবায়ু অভিযোজন সক্ষমতা অনেকাংশে প্রমাণ করেছে। জলমগ্ন এলাকায় আমাদের সনাতনী ভাসমান কৃষি পদ্ধতি 2015 সালে FAO কর্তৃক কৃষিতে বিশ্ব ঐতিহ্য হিসেবে স্বীকৃতি পেয়েছে। আমরা অ্যাগ্রো ইকোলজিক্যাল জোনসের সঙ্গে সামঞ্জস্য রেখে কৃষি উৎপাদন ব্যবস্থাকে ঢেলে সাজাচ্ছি। জৈব সার উৎপাদন, ফসলি জমির বৈচিত্র্য, বিরূপ পরিস্থিতি সহনশীল জাত উদ্ভাবন, সামুদ্রিক সংরক্ষিত এলাকা এবং প্রজনন ক্ষেত্রগুলোর সুরক্ষা, বৃষ্টির পানি সংগ্রহ এবং ম্যানগ্রোভ বাগান প্রস্তুতকরণ সহ বহুমুখী পদক্ষেপ গ্রহণ করেছি। ইতিমধ্যে কৃষি উৎপাদনের সময় সিনক্রোনাইজেশন সহ বিভিন্ন আধুনিক পদ্ধতির প্রচলন এবং স্বাস্থ্য পরিবেশ সম্মতভাবে রাসায়নিক সার ও কীটনাশক ব্যবহারের ক্ষেত্রে আমাদের চাষিগণ যথেষ্ট বিচক্ষণতার পরিচয় দিচ্ছে। আমাদের আহ্বানে সাড়া দিয়ে দেশের তরুণ সমাজ কৃষিক্ষেত্রে যুক্ত হয়ে স্মার্ট কৃষি বাস্তবায়নের পথে এগিয়ে এসেছে। আন্তর্জাতিক পর্যায়ে কৃষি ও খাদ্যপণ্যের রপ্তানি বাড়াতে উৎপাদন হতে শিপমেন্ট পর্যন্ত আমরা উত্তম কৃষি চর্চা, হাইজিন প্র্যাকটিসেস, গুড ম্যানুফ্যাকচারিং প্র্যাকটিসেস অনুসরণ করছি। এছাড়াও আন্তর্জাতিক মানসম্পন্ন অ্যাক্রিডিটেড ল্যাব স্থাপন করে দেশি পণ্যের মান নিশ্চিত করার দিকে মনোনিবেশ করেছি। আমরা কৃষি প্রক্রিয়াজাতকরণ বিশ্বের প্রণোদনার ব্যবস্থা করেছি। এছাড়াও আফ্রিকা সহ বিশ্বের বিভিন্ন স্থানে আমাদের কৃষি উদ্ভাবন অভিজ্ঞতাকে কাজে লাগাতে আমাদের আগ্রহ কথাও আমরা সকলকে জানাচ্ছি। আমাদের অভিজ্ঞতা আমরা সকলের সঙ্গেই শেয়ার করতে চাই। সুধীমণ্ডলী, বৈশ্বিকভাবে 690 মিলিয়ন মানুষ এখনও অপুষ্টিতে ভুগছে। প্রায় 2 বিলিয়ন মানুষের খাদ্য নিরাপত্তা নেই এবং প্রায় 3 বিলিয়ন মানুষ সুষম খাবার থেকে বঞ্চিত। চলমান রাশিয়া ইউক্রেন যুদ্ধ এবং নিষেধাজ্ঞা ও পাল্টা নিষেধাজ্ঞার ফলে সৃষ্ট খাদ্য, সার, জ্বালানি ও আর্থিক সংকট বিশ্বজুড়ে ক্ষুধা ও অপুষ্টির সমস্যাকে ঘনীভূত করেছে। তবে পুষ্টিকর খাবার সংগ্রহের অক্ষমতার জন্য কৃষি ও খাদ্যপণ্যের মূল্য একমাত্র প্রতিবন্ধকতা নয়, এজন্য প্রয়োজন সবার জন্য অন্তর্ভুক্তিমূলক ও টেকসই খাদ্য ব্যবস্থাপনা প্রবর্তন। এ প্রেক্ষাপটে বিশ্বব্যাপী টেকসই, নিরাপদ ও পুষ্টিকর খাদ্য ব্যবস্থা নিশ্চিত করতে আমি 5টি প্রস্তাবনা পেশ করতে চাই। আধুনিক কৃষিতে বিনিয়োগের জন্য বহুপাক্ষিক উন্নয়ন ব্যাংক এবং বেসরকারি উদ্যোক্তাদের উৎসাহিত করতে আন্তর্জাতিক পর্যায়ে আর্থিক প্রণোদনা ও নীতি সহায়তা প্রদান করা প্রয়োজন। দ্বিতীয়ত, জাতিসংঘ মহাসচিবের উদ্যোগে ব্ল্যাক সি গ্রেইন ডিলকে চালু রাখার পাশাপাশি খাদ্য ও সার রপ্তানির বিধিনিষেধগুলো তুলে নেওয়া সহ যে কোনো বাণিজ্য বাধা অপসারণের লক্ষ্যে সমন্বিত পদক্ষেপ নেওয়া একান্ত প্রয়োজন। তৃতীয়ত, জরুরি পরিস্থিতি মোকাবেলায় বৈশ্বিক আঞ্চলিক ফুড ব্যাংক প্রতিষ্ঠার পাশাপাশি জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের ফলে খাদ্য উৎপাদন ব্যবস্থা রূপান্তরের লক্ষ্যে উন্নয়নশীল দেশগুলোর সহায়তা আন্তর্জাতিক সম্প্রদায়কে এগিয়ে আসতে হবে। চতুর্থ, কৃষি শিক্ষা ও গবেষণার ক্ষেত্রে চতুর্থ শিল্প বিপ্লবের সঙ্গে তাল রেখে ন্যানো প্রযুক্তি, বায়ো ইনফরমেটিক্স ও অত্যাধুনিক কৃষি প্রযুক্তিগুলো সকলের জন্য উন্মুক্ত করে দেওয়া বাঞ্ছনীয়। পঞ্চমত, প্রতি বছর বিশ্বজুড়ে উৎপাদিত খাদ্যের প্রায় 1/3 অপচয় রোধে তরুণ সমাজকে অন্তর্ভুক্ত করার মাধ্যমে ব্যাপক সামাজিক আন্দোলন গড়ে তোলা জরুরি। সম্মিলিতভাবে প্রয়োজনীয় কর্মপরিকল্পনা গ্রহণ ও বাস্তবায়ন করতে পারলে আমরা বিশ্বব্যাপী টেকসই খাদ্য নিরাপত্তা অর্জন করতে পারব। এই আশাবাদ ব্যক্ত করে আমি আমার বক্তব্য শেষ করছি। আপনাদের সবাইকে আন্তরিক ধন্যবাদ and special thanks for the Secretary General, UNO, and for Prime Minister Italy for your hospitality. জয় বাংলা, জয় বঙ্গবন্ধু, বাংলাদেশ চিরজীবী হোক।
থ্যাংক ইউ So thank you very much, Prime Minister, and I think that the example of Bangladesh gives us the idea that really things can change. So let's move to a different perspective, and I will welcome the Prime Minister of Samoa, who's also the chair of the Alliance of Small Island States, Fiame Naomi Matafa, and let me also acknowledge the fact that there are so many female prime ministers on this stage, and this is also about change. So welcome her with a good round of applause. Please, Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Secretary General Guterres, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I bring a message of trepidation on behalf of 65 million persons in the small island developing states across our world. But I also bring a missive of hope. SIDS find themselves on a precipice. Extreme events rage on our shores. In some places, drought hardens our land and dries up our rivers. Our economies struggle against the burgeoning food and energy prices. The debt and disaster cycle forces the hands of SIDS leaders. The SIDS are slipping from our grasp, and the ebb and flow of our development seems commonplace. Intuitively, we know that decisions that place people over planet or planet over people are not real solutions. They are instead temporary fixes for long entrenched challenges that require a holistic approach. The small islands of this world are some of the most biodiverse. Our people have enjoyed the bounty of the land and the sea for generations. From the vibrant aquamarine lagoons to the lush greenery of our shores, our islands hold a treasure trove of life that is both awe-inspiring and crucial for our planet's ecological balance. As stewards of 70% of the world's oceans, SIDS have actively advocated at the international level for more commitments that conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources. However, today we find ourselves in a food and health crisis. Arguably, we didn't find ourselves here overnight. Unlike many of our other struggles, this crisis has much to do with our choices, as it has to do with who we are as small islands. Our growing populations and economies have shifted our mindsets. We believe the more disposable income somehow equates to greater imports of foreign foods. In the Caribbean and Pacific, we import on average over 60% of our foods, and over half of us are importing up to 80%. In doing so, we import predominantly calorie-dense, processed, and ultra-processed foods. We have therefore undergone a nutrition transition. Our people struggle with NCDs and obesity, and our health systems are under immense strain dealing with this epidemic. We also import much of our dietary staples, including wheat, corn, meat, and dairy. So we are at the mercy of global food prices. As price takers with high transport costs, every upturn balloons in SIDS. As a result, we have very little food security. Coupled with this, we're all too certain impacts of climate change. More intense disasters, land degradation, and the exploitation of our ocean's resources. The result is a crisis of limitless proportions. These planetary changes leave no middle ground. Our land is either too wet or too dry, both unsuitable for agriculture. Meanwhile, our waters are being exploited unsustainably, while rising temperatures are killing existing marine life. More recent studies have emphasized the negative relationship between the degree of structural vulnerability of countries and their progress towards achieving SDG 2. This implies that countries with a higher degree of vulnerability, SIDS, face more difficulties to end hunger and achieve food security and improved nutrition. These challenges have been at the forefront of our minds since 1994. In each iteration of our decadal development plans, we have reaffirmed the rights of SIDS to lead healthy lives, ensure the sustainable use of our resources, and accelerate resilience and reform. The 2017 GAP report sought to advance much of this thinking, as did the midterm review of the Samoa pathway. Restatements without foreseeable results. As we look towards our fourth International Conference on SIDS in 2024, we must pivot from contemporary to transformational approaches. We cannot succeed at ensuring the balance between people and the planet until we recognize that one cannot exist without the other. SIDS know this. We live this. The food systems approach sits well within the integrated approaches we have always championed. Our small and unique ecosystems ensure that we are inherently closer and more attuned to our food systems and the intricate linkages between what we eat and use and the legacies for future generations. And still, the implementation of our development plans based on our principled approaches remains low. This is our point of departure today and into the next year. We need to be able to grow what we eat and eat what we grow. But that simple construct is so far-reaching and presupposes that we can adequately support the actions that lead to the right outcome. Our land and oceans must be viable. SIDS can do its part, but much of our challenge lies with the users and extractors far beyond our shores. It is not too late to protect what we have. All it requires is determination and tenacity. Climate action must be at the forefront of all our endeavors. Without the credible action of the international community, SIDS face a future with land underwater and no usable ocean. Our health systems are at a breaking point. Too many of our citizens are living with preventable diseases. Our once nutrient-rich diets are now replaced by cheap and non-nutrition foods. Our agriculture industries need a reboot. Our small-scale and smallholder farms must be strengthened. For far too long, we have kept to the rhetoric. The world has changed, and so must we, in an adaptive manner. Our farmers need more climate-resilient infrastructure, better inputs, and greater national support to ensure their viability. We need to access more environmentally friendly technology to support our local food production. The women that underpin much of our food industry similarly require very targeted assistance to overcome the persistent challenges that they face. The 2022 Pacific SIDS Solution Forum made a resounding call for increased local production and import substitution as a catalytic measure for advancing the food systems transformation agenda. The COVID-19 pandemic was a stark reminder of how fragile and interconnected we are, and the absolute necessity of strengthening our adaptive capacity. We employed a series of social safety nets across SIDS, but these were just barely enough to support our people. Our national incomes were at the brink of collapse, and many SIDS leaders were forced to make unenviable but bold choices, such as the Pacific, opting to prioritize the health of their populations over economic recovery. The pandemic re-emphasized the position of many SIDS, limited options in the face of multiple and layered crises. We must therefore tailor international financial mechanisms in addressing the vulnerabilities faced by SIDS and to enhance and strengthen the availability and quality of data. The truth is, without integrated consideration and collective undertaking, vulnerable countries will not know resilient development. Coordination of efforts at the local, regional, and global levels remain key. Therefore, the food systems approach is much more than improved agriculture or nutritionally better diets. It takes an overarching methodology that links sufficiency, fairness, and sustainability with our people and our planet at the center. The approach must be country-tailored in order to advance the food systems transformation agenda. It is the North Star of the United Nations. It is humanity in a calamitous world. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. We're very much fragile and interconnected. This is the strong message. And now a different perspective. Let me welcome the Prime Minister of Nepal and Chair of the last Development Country Group. please come on stage. And with the perspective of the least developed countries, I think we will have another key aspect of what we're going through. Prime Minister, floor is yours.
Excellency, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellency Prime Minister of Italy, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I feel honored to address the opening session of this summit as the chair of the Global Coordination Bureau of the least developed countries. I thank the Prime Minister of Italy, United Nations Secretary General, and the UN system in Rome for bringing us together for the cause of healthier, equitable, and resilient food system. Excellencies, through the Agenda 2030, we envision a world where food is sufficient, safe, affordable, and nutritious, and we are able to end hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. We also committed ourselves to double the agricultural productivity, ensure sustainable food production systems, implement resilient agricultural practice that help maintain ecosystem, strengthen capacity for adaptation to climate change and other disasters, and to increase investment in agriculture in the least developed countries. Perhaps this is the right time for us to take stock of the progress and shortfall and clear our path for more robust implementation. The food insecurity is fueled by extreme weather events, economic shocks, and variety of threats to human, animal, and crop health. The impact of COVID-19 pandemic on livelihood, incomes, and food prices has been devastating. The LDCs continue to be the hot spot of food insecurity. According to the FAO, over 251 million people in the LDCs suffer from severe food insecurity, with some experiencing over 50% chronic undernourishment. Surging food inflation threatens destabilizing societies. We are the countries where the needs are higher, but the capacities are limited. Our agri-food system operates under a perpetual cloud of risk and uncertainty. We must no longer ignore this escalating food insecurity and nutritional crisis. We need a collective commitment to give hope to the people living in the least developed countries. This calls for scaled-up investment in transforming our food system, adapting to climate change, and building resilience of the LDCs. Now more than ever, we need to band together and focus our energy on bolstering our emergency response capabilities. To minimize risk, we need to increase investment in early warning systems that can help identify areas where food insecurity is likely to escalate. Coping with risk, on the other hand, requires us to establish well-targeted social protection measures to support the most vulnerable. This includes implementing cash transfer and food for work program, as well as prioritizing investment in the most vulnerable communities. Our ability to take the right interventions demands accurate and up-to-date data and information. Building resilience and increasing productivity in the face of climate change call for ensuring smallholding farmers access to technology, fertilizer, markets, crop diversification, finance, and resilient infrastructure. We must ensure that the most vulnerable people are safeguarded from the threats of food insecurity, malnutrition, and associated health implications. We thank the UN Secretary General, FAO, and WFP for their leadership to leverage collective action on food security, food system transformation, and to address food insecurity in the LDCs. The Doha Program of Action envisions a food stock holding system for LDCs to channel this vital aid to the poorest and most vulnerable. We commend the Office of the High Representative for LLDCs and SIDS for leading this initiative. I urge multilateral development banks, international financial institutions, and our development partner to step up their support for this critical initiative. We have an opportunity to ensure a world free from the anguish of hunger and malnutrition. Let us realize it and act now. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and thanks for conveying here the voice of the most vulnerable. And now let's listen to the voice of the organization which is hosting us. Please, Director General of FAO, Shudong Yu, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Excellencies, Honorable Prime Minister Meloni and Secretary General Antonio Guterres, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm especially honored to welcome you to the FAO headquarters in Rome for this milestone event. This is an important moment to assess progress in agri-food system transformation on the way to achieve the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. The UNFSS summit process has made it clear to all of us that our agri-food system hold huge power and potential in contributing to the achievement of SDGs. While there are still many challenges, we have made progress in identifying the solutions that agri-food system can provide for better production, better nutrition, a better environment, a better life to ensure that no one is left behind. This solution depends on transforming global agri-food system to be more efficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and more sustainable. In the face of increased uncertainty, multiple crises, we need to urgently undertake this transformation to fulfill high expectations we have from our agri-food systems. The need to meet the increased demand for food, feed, fiber, and biofuel, while reducing the pressure on the natural resources. They must reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and safeguard biodiversity. They have to increase the resilience to the climate crisis, conflict, and other disruptions to the supply chains. They must ensure decent employment and ensure the access to safe and nutritious food and health diet for all. With its technical professional expertise, together with the partners as part of the interrelated system, FAO works to support its members to help make their agri-food system fit for the purpose. In delivering innovative solutions, to accelerate progress, we need to leverage cross-cutting accelerators, and FAO is focused on 4 key areas. First, science and innovation. Enhanced linkage across agri-food systems are needed for impact at scale, including innovation in traditional and indigenous knowledge. We need to harness the potential of technology to improve the food productivity with less resources. We need to scale up climate resilience, such as by introducing drought heat tolerance to the popular high-yielding staple food varieties. We need to increase efficiency, including through the technology and innovation for reduced food loss and waste, which could feed additional 1.26 billion people each year, with a positive impact on the environment and the green economy. Second, improve data capability. FAO is currently working with the 46 countries that have engaged in the FAO hand-in-hand initiative, use the geospatial data platform, which was the first proposal as an evidence-based, country-led, country-owned initiative to consolidate strengths from the diverse resources and help the most vulnerable countries and populations. FAO 1000 Digital Village Initiative is a country-led, youth-central initiative that supports the dissemination and enhance the use of digital tools in agri-food systems and rural areas, enabling farmers to use digital technology, and also digital solution platform to serve the value chain in the seed already established 2 years ago, together with our sub-regional and regional office in RAB. Furthermore, e-agriculture for improved productivity through the ICT application and the relevant digital solutions, promote digital farmer service to enhance the farmers' accessibility to various digital social, economic, finance services, and support the rural transformation through the delivery of public services. Third, finance. We need an increase in targeted and coordinated public and private finance. Transforming agri-food system will cost $4 trillion from now on to 2030. It's a big, big requirement. Empowerment of the women and the marginalized groups are essential to ensure access to the food, gender inequality, and social protection for all. We estimate that closing the gender gap in farmers' productivity and the wage gap in agri-food system alone will increase the global GDP by $1 trillion, thereby reducing the global food insecurity by at least 2 percentage points and reduce the number of food insecure people by 45 million. And the fourth, governance. The establishment of inclusive agri-food system governance mechanisms at the highest level enable the holistic national food policy and strategies. Multiple stakeholders, partnerships, and platforms at the national, regional, and the city level are key to break down silos. Due to the rapid urbanization, with 70% of world population projected to live in the city by 2050, we need to improve the coordination, bring together decision makers across the rural-urban divide and between the city and the national levels. Dear colleagues, unlocking the full potential of food systems can only happen if we focus on this accelerate to help minimize the trade-offs and maximize synergies. Agri-food system is a part of the global interconnected big system. 4 years ago, I proposed to establish a World Food Forum considering the 16 October World Food Day, commemorate the established FAO joined the UN family. A week-long World Food Forum event has been established to ensure that issues related to food security and agri-food system transformation remain high on the international development agenda since 2021. The World Food Forum was held innovatively around the 3 major pillars of the global agri-food system transformation: FAO Hand-in-Hand Investment Forum, FAO Science and Innovation Forum, and the Global Youth and Women Empowerment Forum, including indigenous peoples. And you can use the World Food Forum as open and impactful platform to scale up, speed up 2030 agenda on SDGs. Let us continue work together in harmony as close partners for people, planet, and prosperity for a better world. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Director General. Thank you. You were speaking about working together, and we know that you've been working hard, even with the Italian government, to organize all this. But I know that by this time they told me that the Secretary General of United Nations and Prime Minister Meloni will leave the room. So we thank you once again, and we follow you with a round of applause. Thank you so much. And now, you know, we have been going through so many witnesses, so many examples that we really understood is one of the key topics here is about, yes, innovation, education, but finance is one of the topics that came very often on stage. And so let me just welcome here on stage the president of Armenia, Vahad Khachatkan. Okay, I know that it happens every single time with his name, and I thank you so much for his kindness.
Famous composer.
We know that. Pleasure to have you on stage, President. And the President of Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, Agnes Khalibata, that has been on this same stage 2 years ago, so I welcome her here, and the President of IFAD, Alvaro Lario, that is joining us on stage as well. So please, I don't know if there's a way you can come in, but kind of complicated, but this floor is yours. So thanks for joining me on this stage right now. And let's start with the President of Armenia, because we heard so many examples here on the stage in the last hours, and it's possible that we're going to follow this idea of transformation and how Armenia herself is transforming when it comes to the food systems and the financial challenges. So what kind of experience Armenia can bring in our discussion today? Thank you, my President. It's okay. I'm going to follow you in. Please, let's.
Մենք հնարավորություն ունեցանք այս մեկ ժամվա ընթացքում լիարժեք տեղեկանալ աշխարհում բոլորիս հետաքրող լրջագույն խնդիրների մասին, որը կապված է սնունդի հետ։ Ես եթե մարդկության պատմությանը անդրադառնանք, մարդկության պատմության երևի մարդը երբ որ մոլորակում հայտնվել է առաջ օրվանից իրեն սնունդի հարցն է հետաքրքրել։ Այսինքն պայքարը եղել է սնունդի ձեռքբերման համար։ Սկզբից այդ պայքարը բնության հետ էր։ Ժամանակի ընթացքում այդ պայքարի ձևերը փոխվեցին։ Եվ երբ որ մարդիկ ոնց որ թե կարողացան այդ հարցը լուծել, հետո սկսեցին իրար հետ պայքարել։ Որպես մարդիկ, որպես խմբեր, որպես պետություններ, եւ հիմնականում բացի իշխանություն ունենալուց դա պայքար էր նաեւ հենց սննդի համար։ Եվ հիմա մենք 21-րդ դարում ենք ապրում եւ 21-րդ դարում մենք լրջագույն խնդրի առջև ենք կանգնած բոլորս։ Բոլորս ովքեր նստած ենք այստեղ, բոլորս ովքեր ապրում ենք երկիր մոլորակում, եւ մենք ամեն մեկս ունենք մեր պատասխանատվության չափը։ Կապ չի, դա որևէ նշանակություն չունի հզոր երկիր է, ոչ հզոր երկիր է, մեկն ենք, թե ընդհանրապես ամբողջ աշխարհի բնակչությունն ենք, մենք պատասխանատվություն ունենք այս իրավիճակի համար։ Եվ հիմա մենք լուծումներ ենք ուզում գտնել։ Եվ այս այդ լուծումները լսում է այստեղ ելույթներում։ Ամեն մեկս մերը ունենք, մեր խնդիրը։ Ամեն մեկս մեր խնդիրների մեջ նաև մեր լուծումները ունենք։ Մեկի մոտ ջուրը ավել է, մեկի մոտ ջուրը պակաս է, մեկի մոտ սարերը շատ են, մեկի մոտ սարերը պակաս են։ Ամեն մեկս մեր խնդիր ունենք եւ ամեն մեկս մեր ձևով ենք պատկերացնում ինչպես պետք է լուծենք խնդիրները։ Հայաստանը այն երկրներից է, որը ավելի շատ սարեր ունի, քան վարելահողեր։ Բայց դա չի նշանակում, որ այդ երկրում հնարավոր չէ պարենային հարց լուծել։ Ընդհակառակը, մեր պատմությունը ցույց է տվել, որ մենք հազարավոր տարիների ընթացքում փորձել ենք մեր պարենային հարցերը ինքներս լուծել եւ ստացվել է դա եւ եթե մեր հայտնի մատենադարանում հին ձեռագրերի այդ հայտնի համաշխարհային ինստիտուտում ծանոթանանք հին ձեռագրերին, այնտեղ կհայտնաբերենք, որ հազարավոր տարիներ առաջ, թե ինչպես ենք մենք կարողացել այդ խնդիրները լուծել։ Դա նաև կուլտուրա է, բարձր կուլտուրա։ Այս ժամանակաշրջանում 21-րդ դարում եւ հատկապես երբ Հայաստանը 32 տարի առաջ դարձավ անկախ երկիր, մեր առաջ նոր խնդիր ծագեց։ Մենք նախկին խորհրդային միության մաս էինք եւ օգտվում ենք նաեւ այդ հնարավորությունից, որ ուներ խորհրդային միությունը որպես մեծ գյուղատնտեսական կամ ընդհանրապես տնտեսական պոտենցիալ ունեցող երկիր։ Մենք պետք է ինքներս զբաղվեինք եւ ասեմ ձեզ, որ վերջին տարիների ընթացքում այդ թվում նաեւ Միացյալ Ազգերի եւ նաեւ ՖԱՕ-ի աջակցությամբ լրջագույն ձեռքբերումներ ունենք։ Մենք ավելացրել ենք վերջին տարիներին գյուղատնտեսության ֆինանսավորումը 3-ից 4 անգամ, որի հետևանք արդյունքում եւ ավելացել է գյուղատնտեսական արտադրանքը։ Տեսեք, պարոն նախագահ ՄԱԿ-ի գլխավոր քարտուղար ավելի ճիշտ ասեց, որ բիզնեսի եւ կառավարության համատեղ գործողությամբ պետք է իսկապես մենք հարցեր լուծենք, մենք այդ սկզբունքով ենք գնում։ Մեր մոտ գյուղատնտեսական զարգացման հիմնական ծրագրերը միտված են բիզնեսին մասնակցությանը։ Այսինքն մենք տնտեսական, ֆինանսական այնպիսի մի համակարգ ենք ստեղծել, որտեղ բիզնեսը ինքը շահագրգռված է գյուղատնտեսությունում ներդրումներ անի։ Դրանք եւ հարկային որոշակի արտոնություններ են, դրանք եւ ֆինանսական որոշակի հասանելիություն են ստեղծում, եւ ամենակարևորը, դրանք միտված են ժամանակակից բարձր տեխնոլոգիական գյուղատնտեսություն ունենալուն, որտեղ ջրիկ ծախսը քիչ կլինի, որտեղ պարարտանյութի ծախսը քիչ կլինի, որտեղ իրականում միավոր աշխատանքի տված արդյունքը անհամեմատ ավելի բարձր կլինի։ Եվ մենք այգեգործության մեջ մեծ հաջողություններ ունենք։ Հիմա մենք անասնապահության մեջ այդպիսի ներդրումներ ունենք։ Եվ հիմա քննարկումների մեջ ենք, ասենք մասնագետների հետ, թե գյուղատնտեսության որ ճյուղը պետք է զարգացնենք։ Բանջարագործությունը, թե ասենք անասնապահությունը կամ այգեգործությունը, շատ կարևոր է։ Այսինքն մեր մոտ նախկինում եթե դա եղել է ուղղակի առանց համակարգման, հիմա մենք այդ ամեն ինչը համակարգում ենք եւ ֆինանսական են սուղ միջոցները, որ կա մեր երկրում, մենք հարուստ երկիր չենք։ Մեր համախառն ներքին արդյունքը 20 միլիարդ է, 3 միլիոն ազգաբնակչություն ունենք։ Բայց այդ մեր ֆինանսական միջոցները մենք անպայման պետք է արդյունավետ օգտագործենք։ Ես մի կարևոր խնդրի մասին եմ ուզում անդրադառնալ պատասխանատվության հարցին։ Մենք բոլորս պատասխանատու ենք եւ երկիր մոլորակի համար, եւ երկիր մոլորակի վրա ապրող բոլոր մարդկանց համար։ Եվ տեսեք, այդ պատասխանատվությունից է, որ մենք հայտնվել ենք այս ծանր վիճակում, երբ որ կլիմայական փոփոխությունները ուղղակի անկանխատեսելի են դարձել։ Ինչքանով մենք կարողանանք այդ պատասխանատու վերաբերմունք ունենալ շրջակա միջավայրին, բնությանը, մենք մեր ապագան ավելի կանխատեսելի կլինի եւ մենք իրականում կկարողանանք վերադարձնել բնությանը այն ինչից որ վերցնում ենք ու չենք վերադարձնում։ Այստեղ նաեւ գլխավոր քարտուղարը խոսեց պատերազմների մասին, անիմաստ պատերազմների մասին։ Ցանկացած պատերազմ անիմաստ է։ Չկա իմաստալից պատերազմ, չկա որևէ արդարացում որևէ պատերազմի։ Կապ չունի որտեղ է դա տեղի ունենում, աշխարհի որ ծայրում, որտեղ դրա ուղղակի վնասը նաեւ եւ բացի մարդկային կորուստների, որ ամենամեծ վնասն է, դա նաեւ վնաս է հենց մեր այսօրվա պարենային անվտանգությանը։ Շատ կարևոր խոսակցություն է այստեղ գնում ռուս-ուկրաինական հակամարտության ցորենի համաձայնագրի հետ կապված, որտեղ դրա արդյունքում իսկապես շատ երկրներ կտուժեն։ Բայց այսօր մեզ համար որպես Հայաստան այդպիսի մի խնդիր է առաջացել։ Խնդիրը նրանից չի, որ պարենի պակասություն կա, խնդիրը նրանից չի, որ մենք առողջապահական խնդիրներ պակաս կա դեղորայքի։ Խնդիրը նրան է, որ կա Լեռնային Ղարաբաղ մի այդպիսի շրջան Ադրբեջանի տարածքում, որտեղ ապրում են 120,000 հայեր։ Այդ մարդիկ այսօր զրկված են սնունդի, դեղորայքի, սովորական կենսական անհրաժեշտության միջոցների մատակարարումից։ Առանց գազի, առանց էլեկտրոէներգիայի, առանց տրանսպորտային միջոցների։ Մենք որպես Հայաստան, որպես հայրենակիցներ, այնտեղ ապրող հայերի շարունակել ենք երկար ժամանակ այդ հարցերում հոգնել, բայց դեկտեմբերի 12-ից անցյալ տարվա փակ է այդ ճանապարհը։ Մենք հիմա փորձում ենք այդ հարցը լուծել։ բայց ցավոք սրտի Ադրբեջանի իշխանությունը այդ մարդկանց որոշել է սովի մատնի։ Այսպիսի մի իրավիճակ էր կա, այսինքն սնունդը կա, ամեն ինչ կա, բայց չենք կարողանում հասցնել այդ մարդկանց։ Այսպիսի խնդիրներ կա։ Մենք դրա համար պարտավոր ենք ամեն ինչ անել, այս բոլոր հավաքվածներս այստեղ, իմ հարգելի գործընկերներ, ձեր այդ գերազանցություններ, ովքեր որ պատասխանատուներ են, մենք պետք է կարողանանք ամեն ինչ անել, որպեսզի աշխարհի որևէ ծայրում, որտեղ կա պատերազմ, որտեղ կա ճգնաժամային վիճակ, որտեղ կա վտանգ մարդկանց կյանքի, մենք պետք է կարողանանք դա չեզոքացնել։ Մենք քաղաքական առաջնորդներ ենք դառնում ոչ թե նրա համար, որ պատերազմենք, մենք քաղաքական առաջնորդներ ենք դարձնում, որպեսզի խաղաղություն հաստատենք։ Ես կարծում եմ մենք բոլորս այս մտածողությամբ ենք ապրում, գործում, նաև այստեղ մասնակցում։ Հավատացնում եմ ձեզ, եթե իրականում այսպիսի միջավայր լինի աշխարհում, մենք շատ ավելի կարևորագույն խնդիրներ կլուծենք, եւ պարենային խնդիրները, եւ առողջապահական խնդիրները։ Երբ որ մենք միասին ենք մի խնդիր ենք լուծում որպես մարդիկ, որպես երկիր մոլորակի վրա ապրող մարդիկ, մենք հաջողություն ենք ունենում։ Տեսեք, COVID-ը մենք միասնական ենք, բոլորս փորձում ենք ընդհանուր լուծումներ գտնել եւ գտանք լուծումը։ Բայց դրանից հետո մենք էլ ամեն մեկը սկսեցինք առանձնանալ։ Էլի սկսեցինք մտածել, թե պատերազմենք, ուժով մարդկանց ենթարկացնենք, որը անընդունելի է։ Շնորհակալություն։
Thank you, President Khachaturian. Thank you very much for reminding us that unity is the value and conflicts afflict this very much. Agnes Kalibata, we were here exactly on this stage a couple of years ago, and so how many progresses have been made, and what were the most important difficulties we found on this, in trying to make food systems happen and change the destiny of the world in some ways?
Thank you, Your Excellency. Excellencies, allow me first of all to really thank and congratulate everyone that is here today on the progress we've made. The hub has made huge progress and supported us to make so much progress, and I really, really wanted to appreciate that effort and everybody's effort. When you look at the conversation here and what heads of state have said who spoke before us, clearly everyone has embraced the food system conversation. Clearly everybody has embraced the fact that we need to transform our food system. So we need to ensure that we move from pathways. We have 126 countries now that have submitted pathways, and those pathways need clarity. So if we can be a little bit more clear on what it is to implement food systems, then we have an agenda. And as we've heard from heads of state that have spoken before, only that clarity can bring us that level of detail, and that will allow us to invest. The second thing is the ability to track progress. If we can have mechanisms of tracking progress, then we can make sure that each of the 126 countries, we can make sure that all of us that have committed and signed to this are actually able to show and hold each other accountable. But more importantly, we also need to make sure that we are working with the private sector. In the Food System Summit, we did engage private sector. And in the journey to COP28, I've seen that UAE is working very hard to ensure that private sector is committing to move landscapes and communities in ways that can actually bring additional financing to what is needed to move the food systems forward. But all that is not going to work if food systems are not working for the poor. And financing today, and I'm sure the president of IFAD is going to talk about it, financing today as is not working for poor communities, is not working for poor countries, is not working for adaptation. So if we can step back a little and ask ourselves whether it's going to be possible for any of us in this world to move forward without all of us moving together. And if we can answer that question and the answer is yes, then we can move ahead. But we all know that the answer is no. We can't move unless we move together. So it's really, really critical that we start finding financial instruments that can work for countries that are struggling with debt, that can work with communities that have already defined their food system pathways and strategies, but can't invest in them, that can work for adaptation, because countries are struggling and need to invest in adaptation. So there are a number of ways and a number of instruments we can use, and we do have instruments of the summit to build on. We do have the science and the scientific group that we worked with in the Food Systems Summit that is able to bring forward and help us with measuring and help us with thinking through how we can track progress. We did work with coalitions that have now formed huge bodies of support outside there. But we have to ensure that we are coordinating right and ensure that resources are coming to countries in terms of supporting them to be able to define their agendas better, but also to be able to attract resources, but also to be able to advocate for the right things. So yes, we have the right amount of energy, we have the clarity of vision, but it's hard work. I want to repeat what Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of Samoa said. It's going to be difficult, and it needs determination and tenacity. I couldn't relate to that. I mean, each of us can't relate to that less. We are we are living in very difficult times, and unless we commit to putting resources on the table, unless we commit to working together, unless we commit to investing in what is most transformative, this is not going to be easy. Countries are already investing, but are we investing in things we must invest in? Because the true cost of food has shown us that actually, in some cases, we lose money as countries. In some cases, we lose money as businesses. So the opportunity is right here in our midst. We need to harness it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And President Lario, President Kalibata was already calling you into the discussion, and this term of finance is always there. So is it enough? Are we addressing it in the right way? Should we be more ambitious? Where should we go?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. We have to be here with all of you. We have heard some of the presidents and prime ministers sharing the challenges and the opportunities. And we are 2 years after the event that we had in New York. So I think it's time to really see whether we have progressed or not, and what some of the things and drivers that have happened. So one of the, I think, positive stock takes, I would say, is that now national pathways are part of what we are discussing with the private sector, with the mobilization for MDBs, and it's a common denominator or a common language. So I think that's something that we have all managed to achieve together, but that's obviously not enough. And I think the numbers are clear, and the Secretary General, he said before, they represent the choices we have made. So let me remind everybody the choices. The choices is that the environmental damage caused by existing food systems is 3 trillion annually. The choice is that public health costs of unhealthy diets are 6 trillion, or the undernourishment costs approximately 1.8 trillion every year. These are choices, just like the, I would say, wild hunger that we're seeing, it's affecting up to 783 million people. So these are the data we're having. So the question is, and we saw it today in the morning, how much does it cost to get back to food system transformation? The World Bank estimates approximately 400 billion per year. This is a very high figure. At the same time, we're seeing subsidies from high-income economies of 700 billion per year. So this is a little bit of the comparison of the figures we are saying. When we talk about financing, when we talk about partnerships, let me be more concrete. We were discussing, and I shared some of the programs and what has worked on them over the last 2 years. We were discussing right now in Nigeria a partnership with the Islamic Development Bank, the African Development Bank, the private sector, on the special agro-industry zones, and how we have managed a project that is more than 500 million and which has transformed and is starting to transform how a lot of this processing is happening. And some of the drivers that the private sector, the farmers, were putting in the table of the successes. And it's very clear, we all know what needs to happen, but let me remind all of us, locally diversified production, farmer-oriented policies, equitable pricing mechanisms with fair prices for small farmers, access to seeds, to inputs, to markets, to finance, the quality of the outputs and the reliability of the supply, the distribution, the storage, the feeder roads, the capacity building in farmers to support them as businesses. These are the things that we're seeing in some of these programs and that work. Now we need the financing. The Secretary General was talking about the SDG stimulus of 500 billion per year. And this needs to come primarily also from domestic resource mobilization. Many times, even the domestic private sector is much bigger than anything that we can think of official development assistance. Remittances are 2 to 3 times bigger than official development assistance. So there's mechanisms out there. We're talking now about the SDR reallocation. And we need to also track them, the data that we also put together this morning. We were talking about a new prototype of financing flows to food systems, 3FS, to track where is this food systems financing going, where is the right policies or not. And this is very important for informed policies. We discussed also how to scale up public development banks. I just came back from Brazil, where for the first time, BNDES, the Public Development Bank, has partnered with us in a project in the poorest parts of Brazil, in the semi-arid region, where they have, you might be more familiar with the Amazon biome, but there's another biome, the Caatinga biome. It's very difficult to grow there any food. There's a lot of, like in many other places, droughts. And this is impacting 250,000 households, more than 1 million people in climate-resilient policies. This is the type of programs we want to have more of, escalate with public development banks, with governments, with the private sector. I see here also Egypt. And we also announced at the last COP, in the nexus of food, water, and energy, we mobilized with the government 2.5 billion on the food side with other MDBs to transform and to connect the water type of challenges with the energy, with the food, with transportation. All of this comes together. We want to have resilient food systems. These are programs that have happened over the last 2 years. We're having more focused conversations, but this is not enough. This is really very scarce. We need to scale up many of these programs that are already working. So I really come out of this stocktake with determination, with renewed hope, but it's clearly not enough. We need to make sure that many of the policies, also from the bigger MDBs, from the private sector, are also pro-poor, targeted at the bottom poor. Because many times we're talking about the bigger policies, the abstract ideas, but these need to come to the people who are actually suffering. And for that, they need to become productive, not only talking about subsistence farming, connecting them to markets. And I think we have a lot of work to do together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me thank you all, and let's thank with a round of applause our panelists. Thank you so very much. Also for telling us that we have to scale up and continue fighting, and for all the examples you gave us. So this was please, you can choose what kind of way out you decide to go through. And may I help you? That's fine. Perfect. Thank you very much. And so this was the state level, the organization level, but it's very important at this stage that we welcome here on stage also all the stakeholders that can be key to reach the goals we're talking about. So let me just ask to join me on stage the Executive Director of World Food Programme, Cindy Hensley-McCain. It's really a pleasure to have you here with us. It's a little bit complicated to go through, so I leave you the chance to go through. And yes, just close to me. And the CEO of Save the Children International, Inger Ashing. Inger, it's such a pleasure having you. Where is Inger Ashing? Is she coming? Hi, from the other side of the room. And the chair of the board of directors of CNH Industrial, Lady Suzanne Haywood. So, Lady Suzanne, very nice to have you here with us this afternoon. And Mrs. Sophie Hillithall, who is Act for Food and Act for Change. Very nice to have you as well on stage. So, thank you for being here with us. It has been a long afternoon, but very important because we had amazing examples and we had the possibility to understand where we're at and what has to be done. So let's focus also on the what has to be done. Executive Director of World Food Programme, as I told you, Cindy Hensley-McCain, the role of civil society and private sector. We just heard something, but I think that that can be the key point where we can start from.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You make a very good point in talking about civil society and the role that it plays in all of this, because the needs have grown so exponentially that we have got to include everybody in this. This is not something that a government can handle or one private sector moment can handle. We are all in this together. So we need inclusion. We need a cross-sectoral approach to this. We need to bring skills in and expertise that we would normally have. I tell my people, think outside the box, and if you can't think outside the box, then go find someone that can do it. But expertise that civil society can offer us, and it's critical, it's utterly critical that we include the private sector in this. And I think private sector, we've not asked enough of them, in my opinion. They have been involved, but we've relied on governments, we've relied on other areas. So private sector, we're coming after you on this stuff, for sure. And a good example of what we're talking about is, of course, our collaboration with Save the Children. It's such a great partnership, and it's great coordination between the two of us, and it's critical to achieving our goals within the field, for sure. Civil society, NGOs, grassroots organizations, faith-based organizations are all part of this. We have to be inclusive in whatever approach you decide to take within your own field, your field maneuvers out there. The key, in my opinion, one of the key elements in this, and probably the most important element, are of course, women, and what they provide and what they give to this. They provide absolutely vital access to marginalized groups, because that's who they are. And so our ability to not only be inclusive with women and working with women and helping women, but that's how we're going to reach a different portion of the society that we need to get to. We need to make sure that we have active participation, as I said, with women and girls. They're marginalized beyond belief, and all too often, they are the ones that know that are the local experts on things. They're the ones that we rely on for the intel, for whatever we need to do, what we shouldn't do, a better management of it, a better thought process about it. So women are key to this. The private sector, as I said, private sector needs to step up to the plate, offering more science and technology, offering a perspective and help with climate-resistant crops. Because as I said earlier, we are all in this together. We no longer can do this alone. And so working together with creative solutions while also being, and this is most important, being transparent, accountable, and accessible. All of these elements are part of what I see our field operations doing, and the needs that we should, of course, at WP to do more of this and collaborate with all of our NGO partners and our civil society. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
And thank you, really, please, absolutely. But thank you for reminding us that inclusion means being able to collaborate and to take out all the energies that are out there. You were speaking about women on the ground. By the way, it's an all-women panel, which is not that bad. But so it was not planned, but things are realities like this right now. So. And let's move in terms of inclusion and action on the ground to Save the Children. I don't have to introduce you because Save the Children is the widest and most known global organization, but maybe you can help us in understanding a little bit more how you can tackle leaders, political leaders, and institutions to be as effective as they can be.
Thank you so much for that challenge. And I think, I mean, we all know that the global hunger crisis is at unacceptable levels, and children are facing a perfect storm of crises. And I want to bring this back to people, because we know that we are now witnessing the worst global crisis, food crisis in decades, and it is putting millions of children's lives on the line. And it's not only threatening their survival, it's actually threatening their whole lives, their future, and the future of their countries. And we also know that the conflicts, the increasing conflicts we see in the world, the climate shocks and the economic instability is leading to huge reversals of gains made in child health, nutrition and poverty reduction. And we are collectively failing the 149 million children who are stunted and the additional 45 million children who are wasted. But this is more than numbers, and we heard in the opening a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics of how bad the situation is. But we're talking about real people, their lives, real boys, girls, women and men. And I think it's really important to put them at the center of what we do. And being a child rights organization, of course, I always focus on children, their rights and how they are impacted. And they have the least responsibility for the situation. And we heard several speakers saying that this is about choices. They have made none of these choices, but it's happening to them. And they are the most vulnerable. But I also want to say a few words about civil society, because I do think that often when we have conversations like this, we tend to forget the importance of civil society and the role that we can and are already playing. We are already engaging as implementers, as we just heard. We are engaging at the local level, ensuring that we are holding different duty bearers accountable, governments, private sector, but we are often also the group or the sector in society that are able to listen directly to people. We are engaging directly with people. So engaging with civil society, having them participating also means that you are much closer to the impacted people themselves. And we need to make sure that that happens even more in the future. Because we know that the food system is broken. We know that we need to act together. And we also know that we are often leaving the people that are the most impacted out of the conversations. And much more needs to be done, even if I'm happy that I'm invited to this this event, but we need to do much more to ensure that all different actors are invited to the tables, but not only to discuss the problems, but also to discuss what we can do about it.
Thank you so much, and thanks for reminding the threats on children's life, because that's our future, and we're betting on our future. Every single time we are forgetting that the threat to children's life is bigger and bigger. So you said civil society, the collaboration with the private sector. So this is why I'm addressing Lady Susan Haywood, because she's the chair of the board of CNH. And so let's try to focus a little bit more on this cooperation that could be key. One of the keys for solution, by the way.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I just wanted to thank you and the organizers for inviting me to be here today and to represent the voice of the private sector. As Inga said, we need to be part of this solution, so I hope that I'm here to start to play a part in that conversation. As Prime Minister Maloney said in her opening remarks, agriculture is a critical art. And it's something that at CNHI we take very, very seriously. We employ 40,000 people, and they're absolutely passionate about making agriculture more sustainable. There are many people and organizations that are represented in this room that are making a difference on this question, but I do believe that the private sector can make a difference as well. And I think there's three things that we can bring. First of all, as Inga said, I think we can bring technological innovation. And I want to talk in a moment about some of the technological innovation that we're doing as one of the world's largest equipment manufacturers in the agricultural space. Secondly, I think that we can bring expertise around agriculture. And lastly, of course, we can also invest. We can put capital into innovation to make agriculture more productive. So I wanted to really just focus quickly on two things that I think are really important and will make a difference to sustainable agriculture. The first one is precision farming. Precision farming is basically allowing farmers to have all the information that they need to hand when they are doing their agriculture. So it means making available to a farmer data about their seeds, about the weather, about the soil, and enabling them to use all of that data when, for example, they're planting a field. We know that when we put precision expertise onto our planters, we can make our farmers much, much more productive. So we're seeing something like a 17% increase in seeds, decrease in the use of seeds, and a 26% increase in yield. So by putting this sort of technology onto the equipment and then making it as widely available as possible, we can make food more available. The second thing, and the two go together, is automation. So our equipment is increasingly sophisticated. If you take our combine harvesters, our kind of combine harvesters today have about 280 million different settings. That means 280 million different ways to set a combine harvester to try and make it as optimal as possible when it's plowing, when it's going through a field and harvesting a field. We can now automate the setting of those harvesters. So rather than relying on a farmer to keep on adjusting that harvester as he goes through a field, it can now happen automatically. And that again means that you can get significant increases in productivity, about a kind of 33% reduction in grain loss, and about a 25% increase in output. So these two technologies, precision farming and automation, can make a huge difference. And finally, I should say that we do all of this working very, very closely with farmers, which is something else that the private sector can do, because it is a question of tailoring all of this machinery to work in the particular geography, and we've heard from many different geographies today, to make sure that it works effectively.
Thank you very much, because it's really very important and interesting to understand how much technology and innovation could impact on all this. Thank you. And Sophie Hilido, so you're the last voice of this opening session. You're young, active, passionate. So we heard so many heads of state, heads of government. What's your perspective? What would you add to this conversation, just as the last voice here, but not least, as they say?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having young people in the room. It's actually quite a difficult room to get into, so thank you for having us here.
We're so happy you're with us.
Thank you. For also having us as part of the summit. We actually have a youth booth in the exhibition hall, so I'm not just here on behalf of myself, but on behalf of a coalition of young people who are trying to transform food systems, and you can see what we have done in the past 22 months if you go and visit our youth booth. We also have an event on Wednesday, the only youth event as part of the summit, in the Philippines room at 12:30, so please do come and join us as we take stock of what young people have done in the last 22 months. But the question we often get as young people is why? Why youth? Why should we be in the room? A lot of us haven't graduated from university yet. We're not properly active, maybe as high as my fellow colleagues in the workforce yet. But I think the answer is quite simple. We had 10 speakers on this stage before our panel. Only 3 of them spoke about young people or mentioned young people in any way, shape, or form. And that's so disappointing as a young person here, and as young people watching. In the Sustainable Development Goal 2, there are targets under the SDG Zero Hunger. Not one of those targets is on young people if they're not in the first 1,000 days of life or a young mother. So we need more emphasis on adolescents and young people who are active parts of food systems transformation. 2 years ago, the UN Food Systems Summit was instrumental in bringing young people into the conversation. We had co-vice chairs who are young people of action tracks. We had a youth liaisons group who was nurtured and brought up by Dr. Agnes Kalabata and her team. Themselves, we were part of consultations, dialogues, events. We had a seat at the table, and now along with the introduction of the SENA youth reps as part of the summit, we would like to see the same momentum that we had on young people as we saw 2 years ago. We can't afford to lose data and stories of young people when we move from summit to summit. And I encourage you to collaborate more with young people. I know my home country, Ireland, included young people in consultations and dialogues. Nigeria has a young person as in its national delegation. Bangladesh, Ethiopia have all committed to the School Meals Coalition. And in the 22 months since the summit, I'd like to remind everybody that over 240 million children have been born, many into poverty, vulnerable to conflicts and climates. And in the same 22 months, over 260,000 young people have committed to food systems transformation. We've seen young people implement projects and campaigns in their local regions, from planting local indigenous crops on their lands, to nutrition programs, to banning junk food advertising in the United Kingdom, to bringing school meals back onto the governmental agenda. But as will all be challenged in the next few days, I want to challenge all the member states here, the private sector, the civil society, UN, to include young people in your conversations. We have the most at stake, but also the most to gain from food systems transformation. The trajectory of young people's histories today will have a significant impact, both economically, politically, and socially in the coming decades. We are the largest generation of young people to ever exist. We're also the most connected, and the history of our planet lies directly in our hands.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for reminding us how important it is to have young people on board when we have to take action. Thank you so much. Another round of applause to our outstanding panelists, because here it's the end of this opening session, and then the discussion will move in a few seconds to the discussion about food systems and climate action, another key issue, obviously. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for your outstanding intervention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.
It was really